Well, hi, everybody. This is Catherine Boyle from Key Ministry. I am flying solo today. My colleague Beth is away with her family on a much needed vacation. But just welcome to everybody who is joining us, whether you've joined us many times for these conversations or if this is your first time. Thanks, everybody, for taking time out of your Monday, August day to join us today. So I have a list of things that we can talk about, but I definitely want to hear from you first, because this group is known for having great ideas and really being very supportive of one another. So if anybody has something they'd like to share, I'd love to start the conversation by hearing what it is that you'd like to share. Anybody? You can raise your hand or just start talking. Okay, Al.
I was in France 2 months ago when we last met on a vision trip, and I saw a lot of stuff needs to get done, but I met with several leaders there that since then have been moving forward toward launching family camps in France. One is going to be a weekend one, October 7th and 8th, and another one looks like it'll be in April of next year.
Okay.
And so I actually went to a Johnny and Friends camp as well for a week in Pennsylvania with my son. And I hadn't been in 5 years. It was great. Johnny and Friends does amazing summer camps. And I went again last week for one day just to get ideas again, because I'll be going back to France probably for both the camps, and certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so, I mean, we'll do it French style, of course, so it won't just be copying Johnny and Friends, but certainly the model is very good. And I think in France, one of the things, one of the great needs I saw was for family camps, supporting families with disability. So I'm thinking a lot about that now.
So what, Al spent a lot of time in France years ago, and so he knows the culture well, he knows the country. So what do you think, just from your perception, do you think is different different in the kinds of needs that families have for disability support versus here, if there are any differences? I'm just sort of curious.
Well, I mean, certainly in the US, there's a need for more churches to do disability, but there's a lot more doing it here. I didn't hear of any one church that's killing it for disability there, or even doing a minimal job, actually. So there's just really not, from what I heard, and I didn't visit everywhere, but I tried to talk to leaders in different camps. They all said there's need for disability work here, but it's just not a main focus. But there are initiatives arising. There's one ministry that's starting a training for Sunday school teachers and leaders in November in France, and that's like a day thing. So I see some initiatives rising up in different camps, but unfortunately, no one knows what anyone else is doing. It seems like and so I guess part of what I can do is help pass information on. And they don't have a network like this, like a Key Ministry, and so that's a need in France. And I have a son with autism. It's similar needs. There's just a lot less resources, particularly for autism. France is way behind compared to the US in what you get in schools and things like that. So there's just a lot of discouragement and things like that. So camps are great for bringing others together and sharing life and talking about things and having fun and just the usual camp experience. But they just need it a lot in France, different types of camps. And so I hope to see a lot more rise up in the next few years there.
Well, it sounds like an opportunity for you. Al recently started a new organization called JP's Ability Hope. So hopefully that can really, you can leverage what, your experiences as a disability ministry leader here, and also somebody who has actually lived in France for a long time to really, come alongside some churches and help. So
that'll be a lot of my focus, I think, the next season, until I die, maybe that'll be
Yeah.
my focus. Probably is France, just because there's such a great need there. And I was there 20 years, so I certainly love the country and love the culture and want to help as much as possible.
Fabulous. Fabulous. All right, Barb Stanley.
Well, first, let me say, Al, I am so excited for you. And this just brings my heart so much joy because I feel like God has taken you full circle and has put you back where he's, where he wants you to plant. So I'm just thrilled for that. And on this same subject, so our ministry is getting ready to partner with our denomination, Church of Nazarene, for the next several years. And we're going to be concentrating on North America right now, because that's the culture that we know how to reach. But there is a huge need for international disability ministry. And when we were at our General Assembly a few months ago, we had people from all around the world asking us for help. So my question is there a group kind of like this for international disability ministry? Where are the resources? What questions should we be asking? Where can we be sending people if we don't feel like we know the culture enough to advise? What's the best thing to do?
Yeah, I hear that as like an Al question, but also a group question. Linda, do you have some ideas? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I just came back from Germany, working at a facility for the disabled outside of Munich. They have 81 displaced Ukrainian orphans with disabilities. Many of them don't even have family anymore. It is a big need, and you don't really need to understand the culture so much, because this isn't about the culture. It's about helping the churches understand that the gospel is for all. This is a church culture issue, not a cultural issue, because see, in Germany, this facility is amazing. They have some of these orphans that just got there last July are actually working in the village. Some are in schools because some of these kids are older because they have disabilities. I visited Vienna, and there's a little known thing about Vienna during the war, that 800 plus children, mainly with autism, were tortured and murdered. It took until 2002 for them to bury the specimens that were left in a basement of a hospital that's still there. The building's still there. It took that long. And we have to show the church how to stand up, because in Holland, they're euthanizing autistic people. 20 some autistic people decided to be euthanized. We have to stand up to this. The White Rose movement was created because Sophie and her brother heard a sermon by a priest that pushed against Action T4, which was the outright murder of disabilities in Germany. The disabled are the first to go, and they're last to be remembered. This facility in Germany that these children are at, just in January, they made a memorial for the people that were killed from that disability place, because that place has been around since like the 1700s. But we have
Linda, what's the name of that facility? Because you said that,
I will send it, because it is a very, very long word.
Okay, if you could share that in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah,
And I'll make sure it goes in our show notes.
When there's social media, they're actually going to share about what our team did, because they were very impressed with how we came in and worked with these kids. We worked with different groups for part of a day. Mm-hmm. These kids couldn't do a full access ministry camp. They would be completely exhausted. Mm-hmm. So God worked it all out for how it worked out perfectly. Mm-hmm. But we have to, I've made a commitment, anytime I'm in Vienna, I will go honor these children that are buried in the same cemeteries, Mozart and Beethoven, and nobody knows. In America, you don't know about these kids, 800 children. And I'm going to learn who these kids are, because this is very important to remember.
Right. So Linda, if I can just interrupt it, she shared in the chat that it's Dominikus-Ringeisen-Werk in Usrburg, Germany. So, Barb, to kind of get back to your question, you mentioned, this huge international need. Maybe that's a place to start for folks who are in ministry in Europe or being contacted by people who are in Europe, that might be a good option. Also, Linda works with Salt Ukraine, which is an organization that, does missions in Ukraine, Poland, Germany area several times a year. So that might be a good place for people to contact as well. Linda, would you mind putting that link in the chat too?
Yeah, we will be hosting teams up to 5, which is either will be I or my colleague Carrie to lead, to go there different times of the year to work with these children, but it won't be no more than 5 because this area of Germany is not used to Americans. Menus aren't in English. A lot of places take only cash. So I will put Salt Ukraine stuff and my information there.
Okay.
Because you can find this organization on social media. Their posts are in German. For some reason, they don't translate, but I can I read it very well. But yeah, we will be doing multiple trips throughout the year to serve these children. And I do have, if somebody wants to email me, I have a report about the whole trip that I share privately because these photos cannot be shared publicly.
Okay. All right. So if you don't mind, just drop your email address in there too. She did share the saltmovement.org website in the chat, and also abnormalmissionary.org, which is Linda's personal mission ministry website. So thank you, Linda, very much for that.
You're welcome.
So Ryan Falk, you have your hand up. You need to unmute.
Yes. Hey,
Okay.
sorry. I just kind of answering Barb's original question. If there's international, it's like you can always send me an email. Our Johnny and Friends International Partners is like the fastest growing part of our organization. And we have in-country coordinators and partners in like Netherlands, Ukraine, Serbia, Uganda, El Salvador, Brazil, Peru, India, China, and I'm probably forgetting a couple others, but they also have like those individuals that are Johnny and Friends staff have relationships in the regions and stuff. So we're always happy to serve as a hub to try to connect people in that way. And I can't guarantee anything, but they're trying very hard to be as broad and comprehensive as possible.
Ryan, so you're number 1 on my list of people I was going to call when we get there. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for what you guys do. If you have information on that part of Johnny and Friends, you could, if you don't mind, to email me later. We haven't started this whole thing yet, but once we get into it, we like to have all our resources ready when people need it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder, of what a network of resources we can all be for one another too, because probably most of you get contacted by people that you're just like, how in the world did they find the ministry, the organization that you work with? We probably get, just last year, I think we get contacted by like 5 different people in Australia. Like, how in the world, did they even find us? But anyway, so very good information. So, okay. So Betsy Becker, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Hi, this is my first time even learning about you all. This is really exciting. I live in Central Asia, and I won't say the specific name because it's being recorded. So I've been here 18 years, working with another American lady who's a special education teacher. We just started doing camps, a lot of exciting things, and trying to figure out, get more resources connected. So Ryan, could you put your email in the chat box? Is that possible to reach out to you guys? Because I got questions for Johnny and Friends. And anybody else in this group working in Central Asia and Islamic cultures? Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so Ryan has shared his email address in the chat, as has Linda. Anybody else have any comments about that or any resources that you might suggest for Betsy? Well, definitely Johnny and Friends is a great one to start. So, and he said Ryan said he's going to send some of their training materials and internal resources on running camps, both domestic and international. Wonderful. And welcome, Betsy. Thanks for joining us. So who else has something going on they'd like to share? No? Okay. Well, has everybody kind of gotten through their summer programming? Yeah, okay. I see a few nods. I know Sylvia had a ginormous vacation Bible school a few weeks ago. So I'm just curious, for those of you who have run summer programming, whether it's vacation Bible school, family camps, whether day or overnight or any other kind of special programming, how did it go? And, did you learn anything that might be helpful to share in this group? Nobody learned anything. Okay. Well, I know that Sylvia's VBS at her church was very well attended. So that's tremendous and was very encouraging. So I am curious though, because this is a group that, is kind of on the cutting edge of what is being done with disability ministry. So whether it's your summer programming or, the most recent thing that you've done in your ministry, how have you involved individuals who have disabilities or their families as, people who serve alongside, not just people who receive? Does anybody have anything they'd like to share about that?
So anyway, I'll go on and share since you called me out.
Okay.
Yeah, at my church, we are just one component of Vacation Bible School. We probably had over 900 children to participate total. The children with special needs, that population was a lot smaller, but we had an inclusive environment as well as a self-contained kind of environment for children who could not participate in the larger group. We had not just through Vacation Bible School, but we had 5, I think it was 5, I don't know, I didn't participate in all of them, 5 different camps throughout the summer, like aviation camp, cheerleading camp, different kind of camps that children with special needs were able to participate in. And sometimes I just went in and gave suggestions and how to make that environment a little bit more cohesive for everybody that was participating in. That you didn't have one student running through 5 assistants in a 3-hour period of time. But next year we're going to definitely have a more a camp that is specifically geared to individuals with special needs, and doing a lot of training, and many of them come to a number of our other programs like Sunday school and respite care and all those kinds of things. So it's not so hard to get the parents to cooperate and even come and volunteer.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of work when you have all the age differences and the variabilities of needs and concerns. And the important thing is throughout the year, just training everybody on what could potentially happen and how to integrate them into what it is that the camp provides.
Mhm. Well, I think it's really encouraging to hear that you had, you have had good support for the summer programming from the parents, rather than just having the parents drop off the kids and have a few hours, and to take it, as a ministry opportunity for the family, perhaps not just as an opportunity for a little respite. What about the rest of you guys? How did it go with your volunteers or involving individuals with disabilities or their whole family in ministry this summer? Barb?
Okay, so this is my experience. So a lot of I used to lead the disability ministry at our church, and then I stepped back because Wonderful Works, the other ministry I lead, became too much to do both. I took a break from serving at all in our ministry because if you used to lead something and then you go to serve in it, sometimes it's good to take a step back So I did, and I recently went back on the team and was told they'll put me in as a sub, but they're sorry, they were they had too many volunteers for our disability ministry and they didn't have a place for me. And it made me so delighted because that's the opposite of what you usually hear. And I was just really, it just really struck me of like everything that we do every day as leaders, like all of that pouring into your teams and building up people to replace you or to keep stretching them, it matters. And but I just encourage each of you, if you don't have a big story today of something that's happened, what you do every day matters. So that was my experience. So I am going to be a sub, and one of these days maybe they'll need me again, but in the meantime, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, what a delight to work yourself out of a job and see it go well, right? I mean, that's really a lovely thing. Anybody else have a good similar kind of story they'd like to share from this summer?
Yes, I was just going to kind of give an update. I don't get to get on every month. Hopefully I'll be more consistent this fall. Summer's insane, but so for those who don't know or haven't met me on here before, my name's Andrea Roseman and I lead Access Ministry at our church. And it started as a ministry for teens and adults with special needs because that's who we had coming already. We're kind of working now trying to build up our buddy program with children, but we do a summer camp for adults, but it's very similar to a VBS. We just don't rotate all over the church. We kind of stay in one place and do stations in there. But this year we had about 45 participants, and every person had a one-on-one person with them, whether they from our highest to our lowest as far as ability goes. And it was just a fantastic week. Everyone loved it so much. And one of my most favorite parts, we had volunteers that ranged in age from 13 to 87 years old. And just to see all of them come together and participate in our special needs ministry was really amazing. And then for our VBS this year, like I said, we're trying to get our buddies strong. So we didn't allow people to register for VBS that weren't already attending our church and that we could use one of their regular buddies with, because we wanted it to be well done and successful. And one of our little guys that has a buddy, he comes on Sundays and he's kind of hard sometimes, but he actually accepted Christ at VBS. And so it was, I get emotional every time I think about it, because if you only knew, well, you do, what we go through on Sundays sometimes. And then and I got to be there with him when that happened. And so it was so amazing. He's going to be baptized in October. He wanted to wait till he was 8. And he was he knew what he wanted. And so that happened. And then a few months ago, I was asking you guys about sibling support group information. We actually had our first meeting Saturday, and we had 6 sign up for our younger age group and 4 for our older age group. And it was an amazing day. Our leaders that are going to lead that both grew up with siblings with special needs. So I'm just there for support, and eventually I'll step away from the meetings altogether, but it was really good. So thank you guys for the ideas that you gave me that day for that.
Wonderful. That sounds like such a good model, Andrea, that you're setting things up and eventually they just get taken over by others. That's a beautiful thing. So, and congratulations on, sounds like a very impactful VBS. Yes, Patty has his hand raised.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here in Rochester, New York, up in Western New York, over by Buffalo and Syracuse, and in Rochester. I work for a service providing agency, a group home agency here, and we have our kind of our summer camps coming up at the end of this month, middle and end of this month. And I'm one of the chaplains with the agency Heritage Christian Services, and lead the devotions at our summer camp, week-long summer camp daily, and always include the people we support, people living with disabilities, in our devotions and prayers, and actually ask them to lead the prayers. And most often people are very enthusiastic and ready to really jump in with guiding the prayers. So that's always really cool.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, Patty.
You're welcome.
We got a question in the chat about recruiting volunteers and training and, just, and helping churches become more accessible. Did any of you, I guess, how did it go this summer with recruiting volunteers for the initiatives that you have that, are not like a recurring thing? Was there anything different that you did? Did you follow basically the same kind of recruiting and promotion strategy that you follow throughout the rest of the year? Anybody have any information to share about getting volunteers for the summer?
Back to my summer camp. One thing that I did, because it does take a lot more volunteers than a typical Sunday to run that, just because I wanted everybody to have their own person. I just started thinking about people that are constantly saying, we're praying for you, or I pray for you every morning. I pray for this ministry. And so like the 87-year-old lady, I called and I just started making phone calls and I said, hey, there's no pressure. If you say no, I'm not going to be upset, but let me tell you about camp and see if you think this is something you could come and help us with. And I didn't get any no's because people didn't want to. If it was a no, it was because they were going to be on vacation or not in town or something like that. So I just simply, no pressure, but reached out and invited people to join us. And like I said, was able to get enough for everyone.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like that personal touch, was really impactful. The outreach that you did that way. I mean, I think that that's always the best way, if at all possible. So anybody else have anything to contribute to that? Okay, we have lots of conversations about volunteer recruitment and training. And just as a little reminder to folks, we do record all of these conversations. We post them on our YouTube and Vimeo channels. So, feel free to go search there. If there's something that we don't address today or in any of our conversations that are recorded, you can probably find the topic addressed just by searching keywords on our Vimeo or YouTube channel. So, I loved what I think it was Andrea was talking about was, basically, handing off the groups as they become, kind of their own thing and new leaders raise up. So, does anybody else have anything like that that's kind of like spontaneously happening, whether it's friendships or new groups that are kind of forming, whether it's something that you're planning or that's just kind of organically happening because of your disability ministry? I know summer's a time when, things can be a little bit more loose with, how we normally do things. So I'm just curious if you've noticed anything like that in your church or your ministry. No? Okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. It was just a thought. So, what else is going on? What else? I mean, I assume that everybody comes here because there's something that you want to learn from others, or there's something you want to share. So, what else would you like to ask, or what else would you like to share?
Along the volunteers piece. So my work, I'm Lindsay, and I work for the Christian Reformed Church in North America. And so my work is not like a specific program. It's really recruiting volunteers across the US and Canada to work within their local context. So to help their church be more accessible, welcoming. So some of them have programs, but mostly it looks like, how do we adapt a building, adapt a worship service, that sort of thing. But anyway, our struggle has been that COVID has, a lot of our volunteers are aging. And I think the break of COVID, of just sort of having a pause on doing things, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but when I meet with our volunteers, about half the time they resign. And so I'm just curious if others are having like mass exodus of volunteers from like kind of re-engaging after COVID, that they're saying, you know, I just don't have the margin to do this, or yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on.
So, question for the group, and maybe it's the kind of thing, I mean, we've definitely talked around that a little bit, but it's been a little while because most churches, I guess, we're kind of back to normal at least a year ago. But, I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts about, how you navigated that, because I think most churches had some of that. So yes, Barb.
So this is what I spoke at the Key Ministry Conference, was on how to retain volunteers. If you want, I can email you the slides and the handouts. But what we found, we've not had this problem, even though when we came back from COVID, we came back one of the earliest churches for COVID. We only had like 5 volunteers that came back at that time because everyone was still in lockdown. So we adapted what we offered to work with the amount of people we had. And then as more people came back, we went back to add actually more. We ended up getting more students than we had before, and we increased our program. Since then, there's a lot of different ways. And again, I can send you from my talk how to retain volunteers. But the biggest one really is understanding that you need to make the job as easy as possible for the volunteers, which means you're training all the time. You have information that you're not expecting them to memorize, but you actually have it ready and available for them to see right then. And it's really that personal touch that Andrea was talking about earlier, is you don't appreciate people as volunteers, you appreciate people as people. And so what we would do, we would have equip different leaders within our ministry to kind of make sure they're checking on each person as an individual, praying for those people, checking in with those people. And when people get that, they value that. That makes them more apt to put margin in their life, because it's pouring back into them. So there's actually a lot of really great ways to retain volunteers that are probably different than we tend to think of on the surface.
Excellent. Thank you, Barb.
I would just echo that. I think so many ministries make the mistake of only reaching out to their volunteers when they're asking them to do something. And I know it feels like extra work when you're doing what she said, but I have not had trouble retaining volunteers over the 10 years of this, because we have relationships and we have contact outside of Sundays as well. I also try to bring my volunteers together to go out to dinner every so often and do things like that so that we can be together outside of the church setting. But the biggest thing is just making sure that they know that we care about them as people, not just, can you come do something for me?
Yeah, Ryan has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I think kind of in a slightly different vein, although I agree with what you both said, is, and I know it's probably different for you, Lindsay, since you're not in a particular local context, but when I've seen churches that just train all of their volunteers on at least disability awareness, you deepen your bench so much. And you also create networks and webs of support, so you don't have as much pressure coming down on small people. Because what I think had happened prior to COVID, and what broke during COVID, was that you'd created all these single points of failure where you had all disability resting on one point, and once that snaps, there was nothing left. And so it's about, how do you broaden that as much as possible? So like, we just encourage churches, don't have a disability ministry training thing for your disability ministry. Do disability ministry training with your kids ministry volunteers and with your ushers and with everybody else, because it normalizes it in a way where people are more willing to step forward. And one of the things that I think there's often a disconnect between what you're saying and what people hear. So when you're saying we need people to serve in our disability ministry, what everybody hears is, we need people that have expertise in disability to do this. And then they self-select and filter themselves out of the running, even if they would be great candidates. And then kind of the byproduct of doing it that way is then the only people that step forward are the people that are either really passionate about it or really qualified to do that. But then you just recreate that single point of failure and you burn them out and break them, and then scare everybody else from stepping into that role because they saw how that person got chewed up through the meat grinder. So dispersing that burden, I think, is really, really important.
Excellent. Excellent. Al has his hand raised too.
I'm in New Jersey, at a church. I'm not on staff, but they do a couple big parents' day out or parents' night out or whatever, and they recruit the whole church for that. That gives people an opportunity to try it for a 3 hour or 5 hour block. And then if it doesn't work, that's okay, but at least they get a chance to try it. We also do Night to Shine, which is an opportunity for one night to volunteer. And often that's the first time someone has spent that much time with a person with a disability. And then, I mean, the Johnny and Friends camp, again, I'm really impressed with that. Ryan, I don't know if you're on, I was at one recently, and just if someone spends time volunteering as a buddy there, I mean, it's amazing for them. And there was one church that sent 30 people the week we were there. And so, yeah, just it's a way a church can also get involved in as a mission project in training people for disability.
Yeah, I know if Beth was here, she would talk about how many repeat volunteers they have with all of the various events that they do at Bay Pres. So yeah, it does, you know, once you can kind of figure out that first step of getting people to be willing to try to serve, they'll see that they can, you know, that it's not just somebody with special skills or gifts or education that can volunteer in this way. Hey, I wanted to just share a little thing. So some of you know that my church has never officially had a disability ministry, but we've always had the right heart. So we brought on a new kid ministry director this summer. And so I've been laying a little groundwork earlier this year with our pretty new senior pastor and young adult pastor. And so I went and had a meeting with this lady. It was about a month ago now. And I was like 10 minutes into the meeting, getting ready for my big wind up. And she's like, yeah, I've already got a respite event on the calendar for first quarter next year. What do you think about that? And I said, that would be great. Because that was exactly why I was there to talk to her. No lie, 10 minutes in. So I was pretty thrilled. So I think it's going to go pretty smoothly from here on out. I've already got some people who want to volunteer. So, and she's going to do the heavy lift. It's not all on me. So I'm really super excited about that. So, you know, something to pray about if you think about me and Beth and the work that we do. So, so what else, folks? Anything else that you want to share or any more questions? There's been a couple of things in the chat. Somebody asked about the theological statement or a document for biblical theological foundation for disabilities ministry. And Thomas shared a statement from Wheaton in both English and other languages. So, you know, even if this isn't something that you are interested in today, it might be definitely worth your time to check out what Thomas has shared. And I can share that in the show notes as well. So anything else?
Could I say something on that, Catherine?
Yes, of course, Ryan.
It's kind of a passion of mine that, and an observation too, that so many churches that don't seem to have a theology of disability, they actually have all the hardware. And so many times it's just been a matter of helping them connect the dots. So like, isn't it true that your church is called to make disciples of everybody in your neighborhood? Well, sure. Yeah. And how are they to believe in him of whom they have not heard? Yeah. Okay. And then you like string it together things they already have. And then once the circuit closes and the light bulb comes on, they're like, oh, then the question becomes, how do we disciple and make disciples of people with disabilities, as opposed to should we have a program or a ministry? And those are really different questions, but it's not like this entirely other different thing, because it's just helping them see what they already believe about disability more so than it is making them believe something different. Usually, sometimes there might be some wacky stuff. I'm not going to put that outside, but that it's not perhaps as an uphill battle as you think. It's more helping string together existing concepts. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something earlier in the conversation about kind of along those same lines. And it really is more, you know, if you've got the right heart, it's a much easier lift than if you don't have the right heart. So, you know, for all of you who represent churches or organizations that are working with churches that have that right heart, it might be a similar experience to what I've just had with my own church, where, spiritually, they were already ready for this. So, any other comments or questions before we say goodbye? Patty, yes. Patty.
Yes, thank you. I also just wanted to share an initiative that my organization, Heritage Christian Services, has been working on, a group home agency in Rochester, Buffalo area, and we've been working on a grief support initiative for working along with our group of chaplains, but reaching out to other employees in the agency, mostly clinicians, music therapists, dance therapists, art therapists, to help the people we support who are grieving, people who live in our group homes who are grieving the loss of a fellow resident, or someone who's moved to hospice care, to really have that additional support that is so needed. So many of the people we support in our agency are aging, and as people with disabilities are becoming older, to really make sure we have a holistic approach to support the individuals. Also really reaching out to their faith communities of choice in Rochester and Buffalo areas as well.
Excellent. Would you like to share a link to your organization in the chat?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and so speaking of the chat, Linda shared scripture, John 9:1-3, and that's such an important passage for many in the disability community. So not sure who was asking that question. Oh, Betsy, you were asking the question about theology, but that John 9:1-3 is the basis that is really instrumental in a lot of disability ministries, and I would include Key Ministry in that as well. So, well, speaking of Key Ministry, we have a couple of events coming up. We've got Idea Share again next month. I hope that you are signed up to get the link emailed to you every month. If you're not, go ahead and just click on the event on our events page. And then we also have our monthly disability ministry video roundtable on the 16th, which is next Wednesday, like 10 days from now. And what we're going to be talking on that particular DMVR is the question, are you feeling alone in disability ministry? That's something that I think probably most of us have experienced from time to time. And so we're going to be talking about some steps that you can take to help let you, remind yourself that you're not alone in disability ministry, and connect with others who can support you, who can answer questions, who can just, help you see that you aren't alone in this calling that God has for you. And then the last thing that we have going on that I just wanted to share a little bit about, Key Ministry has been working on a curriculum in partnership with Fresh Hope for Mental Health. We launched some pilot groups about, I guess, 4 weeks ago now. We're starting week 5 tonight. We have 2 different groups that are led by facilitators. And basically what we've done is we've taken the Fresh Hope model, and we have applied what we know about life with disabilities and the mental health challenges that come along with families who live with disabilities, and applied that to their model, and have developed this curriculum that is uniquely designed to support the needs of families, the mental health needs of families who have disabilities. So I'm happy to say that it seems like it's going really well so far. Not sure exactly what the timeline is from the pilot, but at some point, whether it's in the fall or in January time period, we'll be officially launching that curriculum. And we'll have a website, link, and we'll have a lot of fanfare around that. I'm pretty excited about it because it has gone really well. It does feel like, putting your baby out there when people start paying attention to it, and anyway, but we're getting some great feedback from the participants, and we really appreciate all the support from the folks who have committed their time to doing this. So, so with that, thanks so much for joining this month's Idea Share, and I hope to see everybody here in a few weeks on the next one. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, Catherine at keyministry.org, or my colleague Beth at keyministry.org, if there's something we can help you with. Take care.